everyone. Welcome back to Cash Flow Confidence. I'm Shelby Ashley, and I help business owners feel more confident about their cash flow. In last week's episode, I talked about the fear that you might face as a business owner when it comes to making big decisions and kind of how to get around that fear. And in this episode, I'm going to talk about 3 financial decision triggers that I help my clients set. And it's just meant to kind of take the mental load off of making these big decisions. So if you're someone who gets stuck overthinking every single financial move, big or small, or if you find yourself asking, should I hire this person right now or should I wait? Or is it time to invest? Or is it time to just kind of sit still and play it safe? Then I hope this episode really takes that mental load off your plate. But first, let's talk about why these decision triggers work. When you don't have them in place, you end up wasting time, or you just spin around and round in uncertainty, or you talk yourself in and out of the same decision 10 times in 1 week. I've been guilty of this myself. And you end up starting to rely on your emotions instead of your numbers, which is a very, very dangerous place to be as a business owner because your emotions obviously are not reliable as business strategy. You need to rely on facts and information. So think of these decision triggers like guardrails. You're driving the car, but they're going to keep you from driving straight off the cliff during a high pressure moment. They give you structure. They give you boundaries. And so the first one is the simplest and perhaps probably the most essential, and it has to do with your minimum cash reserve. So think to yourself the next time you're making a big decision, if my business has less than, say, 3 to 6 months of operating expenses in cash, I don't take on any new financial commitments. So that might mean you're not going to hire anybody else. You're not going to invest in some new coaching program or mentor. You're not going to upgrade any subscriptions until you're back to that 3 to 6 months of operating expense buffer. Because if you are in a place of scarcity, you're going to make decisions that only provide short-term relief, and they're going to be really bad for the long term. And so for most businesses, I'd say at the very minimum, 2 months of expenses in the bank. I mean, that's very minimum, but that's going to give you a cushion to, whether a slow month comes or if a client leaves, it's not going to send you into panic mode. So try to keep a cash buffer and just give yourself your own personal boundary of what you want to keep before you make any kind of financial move. So that one was your cash reserve. The next one is your profit margin. So set a minimum profit margin that you're not willing to drop below. So maybe that's 20%. Then say to yourself, if this decision drops my projected profit below 20%, I'm going to pause and reassess. And that's going to keep you from overcommitting to things, even if it feels exciting. Let's say you're considering hiring that new team member that you're just so excited to hire. You run the numbers and realize it's going to drop your profit margin from 25% to 12%. It may not be worth it right now, if that was the case, you really need to have solid data saying, yes, I expect this person to bring so much more in revenue or save me such and such in cost savings that will result in making up that profit. But if you don't have things like that in place, don't make that kind of decision until you've got your profit margin set. And the third trigger is revenue stability. So this one is all about predictability. I did a couple episodes ago on predictable revenue and how important that is. And so you might say to yourself, if I have at least 3 months of projected and confirmed revenue to cover my fixed expenses, then I can move forward. So that could be recurring client contracts, if you offer any kind of membership or a subscription, whatever you offer that's predictable. If you're still relying on one-off projects, then this trigger is going to help you avoid overcommitting before you have stabilized, because if you're still in the type of model where you're just offering one-offs, that's a dangerous place to be because you really can't bring on anything fixed because your revenue is not even fixed. So I've helped clients use this trigger to try and decide when to kind of expand their offers or when to rent a new office space or expand their current space or when to shift from 1099 hires into W-2 hires, which is a whole episode in itself. But the whole point with this is to give you that solid foundation, that stable foundation, that on top of that, you can now start to build out different decisions and scenarios on what might be possible for your business. So recently, one of my clients needed to hire a operations manager. And so before he decided to hire this guy, we went through these 3 triggers that I just went through. First, we looked at his cash reserve. He had 4 months of cash in the bank, and so he was definitely safe there. I like to tell people when they're hiring like bigger, more higher salaried hire like this, make sure to have at least 3 months of payroll expenses in the bank. Maybe not, total operational expenses, but at least have a few months of their payroll expenses in the bank. The second one was his profit margin. We found that he would stay above 25%, which was super healthy for him. And the final piece was revenue stability. We looked at what he had lined up for the next 6 months, and he had revenue coming in for the next 6 months on these contracts. And so that was an obvious green light. I mean, it's rare that all 3 checks are going to check out, but he was definitely in a position where, yeah, he was ready on paper to hire this operations manager. And on the off-paper side of things, I guess, it was just definitely time for him because he was working like 60 hours a week, and it was just time for him to step back. And so this was just going to be a good move all around for his business. But the point is, he was able to make this hire without second-guessing himself because all of the triggers checked out, and he was able to kind of keep himself out of the weeds without compromising any of his financial health. That's what these triggers are put into place for. They take the emotional weight off of your decision, and they give you a very obvious and clear path forward. So for this week, I want you to think through these and maybe just pick one of these to set inside your business. Maybe it's your cash reserve minimum or your profit minimum or how stable your revenue is. Wherever you're at right now, just pick one and write it down, make it real, and then use it the next time you need to make a big decision. Because when you stick to your own rules, you'll find that you're going to move a lot faster, a lot more confidently, and you'll be able to make just better strategic decisions as opposed to relying on your emotions or your gut feeling when dealing with things like this. All right, that's all I have for this week. See y'all next week.